I would say that, get educated, understand the laws that were passed last year. There were 6 housing-related bills that were passed by the state legislature. Understand them. They're going to have a significant impact on the city of Longmont and really every city along the Front Range. And understand the folks that are running for city council and mayor this year. There are 13, 14 people that have applied to run for city council. There are 4 people, I think, right now that have applied to run for mayor. Most of them have positions on their websites they're doing. In fact, I've got at least 4 or 5 in the next week visits set up with folks running for city council and mayor, just to understand where they're at on issues such as housing and a variety of other issues as well. I would encourage you to get in front of these people, ask the difficult questions, understand their positions. It's going to be a really critical election this fall.
If you're within the sound of my voice, you are watching or listening to the Sterling Spin podcast. And I'm excited to bring you a new spin on living, loving, learning, and also the end game result are solutions for well-being, for your well-being and for the well-being of your communities, your friends, your towns, and ultimately our world. I'm bringing somebody in today who's a big thinker and someone who cares about community, cares about growth, and cares about change. I'm Liz Sterling, and I invite you to enjoy today's program with my guest, John Pillmann. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Liz, for having me. I appreciate it.
He's a retired corporate leader, and he's turned into an active community volunteer here in Longmont, Colorado. John has spent decades in sales and management for Fortune 500 companies and international startups, and now he dedicates his time to serving on the Senior Center Advisory Board, managing his partner's Women's Health Clinic, and supporting the nonprofit New Beginnings. With deep insight into housing, infrastructure, aviation, and senior issues, John brings a broad and thoughtful perspective on what it means to grow and to change as a city, as individuals, and ultimately as a nation. So we have big business to do today. I want to look at it all. I want to really be able to take some of the topics.
Sure.
I did something unusual. I asked you to present me with topics that were on your mind. I generally come in with the questions, but something said flip it around and do it differently. And you said, I want to talk about what's happening right here. Housing is really important. Aviation, we have a small airport, and we're growing by leaps and bounds.
Right.
And so I want to really turn the floor over to you and say, what is pressing that's got your attention and that you feel is worthy of taking your retired time and investing it in volunteering, advocating, and supporting others?
Right. Well, I'm a big believer that, life is change, growth is inevitable, but you can either let things happen to you or you can guide and direct them and try to influence them. So I believe that Longmont is at a kind of a crossroads right now because we've reached that 100,000 mark in population, right? The entire Front Range is growing by leaps and bounds. Longmont is growing a little less so, but it's still, it's a couple of percent per year on average, but it's still growing. And there are more people, I think, that want to move here, that, like you and I talked about earlier, that the cost of living, the cost of housing along the Front Range and Longmont in particular is gotten to be so high that it's creating a barrier especially for younger people.
Young families to
Yeah.
be able to start their lives. I just
Yeah.
recently heard that young families where they used to buy their first home at 31, they're now
Yeah.
in their mid and late 30s.
That's right.
If they can afford to buy in the city in which they live, which
Right.
is not likely anymore
Right.
unless they're making over a $500,000 a
Right.
year.
Right.
It's pretty, I mean, it's really happening.
Yeah.
That it's getting harder and harder. And so how do you change that? What do you do?
Yeah. And there's no there, in my opinion, there's no simple fix. There's no like, if you just do that, right? If you just build another 7,000 apartments in Longmont, the problem will be solved, right? That's just not the way things work, right? Because I believe in a systems approach, right? So housing is part of the problem in terms of affording either to rent or to buy, but the cost of living, the cost of groceries, the cost of insurance, the cost of healthcare, which has become even more exacerbated, right?
Yes,
in
it
the
is
last
right now.
in the last couple of years, and even in the last couple of months, and is likely to get more exacerbated in the future, right? So there is no easy fix, but there are things that are, I'd like to say, and this is positive, there are things that are being done. Some people maybe don't realize all the things that are currently being done to help with this problem, cost of housing in particular, but there are things that are being done in Longmont and other areas along the
Do
Front
you think
Range.
it's important to know what's being done or just to cast your vote and trust those that you vote for that they'll get done for you, the things that need to be done, and then we don't have to worry about that. We could take care of our families,
Yeah.
attend
Yeah.
to our work. I mean, I may not want to fill my head up with that information, but I want to be able to trust that the things that need to happen for my city are actually happening. I'm going to ask you a funny question. First of all, how long have you been in Longmont?
Sure. I've been in Longmont for a little over 10 years. And before that, I lived 10 years down south in Littleton, Colorado, just south of Denver.
Nice.
So I've been in Colorado for 20 years.
The reason why I ask is because I've heard that what Longmont really developed most recently as an alternative to people who couldn't afford to live in Boulder.
There's
And I'm
definitely some
wondering
of
if
that.
that is true from what you understand, is that you can get shut out of a city.
Oh, sure.
It could not be affordable, and you have to go to the next place, whether it be Lyons or Gun Barrel.
No, that's true.
So Longmont is also working very diligently to bridge to Boulder because the Sundance Film Festival is coming in 2027.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that they want to really have a sense that it's like a sister city that you can go to, you could stay at, that you have much more to choose from than people originally thought.
Yeah. I think the average cost of a home in Boulder average is about 1.4 million, right? Where in Longmont, it's half of that. So definitely, and you're only, 18 miles away from Boulder, roughly, 15, 18 miles away from Boulder. There's quite a few people that commute
Yeah.
the diagonal into
Yes.
Boulder from Longmont.
Oh,
and-
yeah,
and
that's
I
for sure.
completely understand.
What is it that you actually did in your work? Because you mentioned systems. So I get you're a systems guy. Did you go into Fortune 500 companies and work with their systems
Yeah.
to help streamline and save money or
Yeah.
give people direction and support in their jobs?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of my career in bank automation systems. So these were systems that anywhere from very early in my career that processed the checks you wrote and cleared those checks through the Federal Reserve System to account processing systems that would store your checking and savings accounts and allow you to know how much your account balance is, and later on for you to be able to log on and do internet banking and that kind of thing. And then later in my career, I focused on a very niche market, ATM machines. So we developed ATM networks. We certified hardware and software within ATM networks, Bank of America, Chase Bank, and smaller banks. So I was responsible for getting those partnerships established to get those systems certified and running. And then in my sales career, I actually sold. At one point, I sold ATM hardware to banks like Bank of America and Chase and those kind of institutions.
So I'm not surprised that with all that you've done and all the automation that you've seen and the digitizing of everything, that you're not going to just sit back and rock on the porch and hang out and do nothing. Like it seems like you have to
Yeah.
have your hand in what's happening.
Yeah.
So what do you think when it comes to housing and affordability? When it comes to cities anywhere that are dealing with increased prices, more difficulty, I want to really, look at the micro and the macro, since you seem to have the mind and the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Let's look at right here and then show me what it means in the bigger picture.
Right, right. So from a local perspective, Longmont, historically Longmont, if you were to look at what we built, like a lot of communities, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? It was primarily single family homes, right? And in fact, I don't know well, actually I do. Right now, there are about two-thirds of real estate in Longmont is single family, and about 1/3 of it is multifamily, okay? But interesting, and in a positive motion, building permits for housing, about 75% of building permits right now are for multifamily housing. About 25% are for single family.
That's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
I mean, that's because it's the most feasible way to house
Right.
the numbers of people
Right.
that are coming in. So,
Right.
so you're positive and optimistic about that. Does that become
Yeah.
a political thing?
It does.
It does.
It does because, what I like to remind people is what we've done that is helping the situation. The challenge is that it doesn't happen overnight, right? So even if you have more land available for development, for even denser development, you can't force a developer to buy it. You can't force a developer to develop on it, right?
Right.
You can make it more attractive to do that, but you can't force them to do it, right? We've done things over the last 10 years to make it more attractive for developers to come in and develop multifamily housing. But there are, and this was kind of the election, but there are those that feel like we haven't done nearly enough, and that concerns me a little bit because time takes time. Change takes time. And
Time takes time, change takes time,
Yeah.
and growth takes time
It does.
too. Yeah.
And we've got a lot of headwinds right now. So one of the things that developers are concerned about, right, is the high cost of building, right? So construction materials, labor, permits, everything it takes to build housing has gone up dramatically
Right.
just in the last few years. So
Yes.
it changes the financials too, right? So a development, let's say that it would have been feasible on a plot of ground 10 years ago, may not be feasible anymore.
Well, the cost of materials, labor costs, everything, transportation, taxations,
Yeah.
tariffs. I mean, I think everything is being built in to make it unaffordable unless you
Yeah.
come up with something
Yeah.
else. But we don't want anybody to cut corners.
Exactly.
So we
Yeah.
have to really have systems in place that monitor.
Yeah.
Also, I think
Yeah.
that's very important to monitor and be sure that the community, the people who are already there, are being considered and taken care of. And what's happening is
You're hitting on a really, really good point because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We want to be sensitive, at least I do, and I think most people do. We want to be sensitive to the folks that are living here today, right? So one of the challenges, I first got involved in this whole thing about 3-4 years ago because there was a proposal to build 70 condos in a lot down the street from my house. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? So I started to educate myself on who's this guy? What's he want to build, right? And everything around where he wanted to build. So he wanted to build 3 stories, these buildings that were about 7 condos per building, 3 stories tall throughout this development. Everything surrounding it was, for the most part, was 1 story. There were some really cute, on this Grant Street down in the south of Old Town, there are these cute bungalow homes that were built in the 60s, and they're like 900 to 1,200 square feet.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they're really cute. And people buy them and fix them up, and they raise their families in them. And that's what surrounds this plot of ground, right? And so we're like, well, if you're going to build a 3-story condo complex right behind these houses, I mean, these people are going to walk out their back door and they're going to be like this. So we were like, well, let's start having discussion within the community and engage and try to figure out what's going on here and can we influence it, right? So
I think that's the operative word, to just pause. Can we influence it?
Yeah.
Where really does the power lie?
Yeah.
And is it with the people or is it with the developers? Is
Yeah.
it the ones who have the money or the ones who want to protect the land?
Yeah, to some degree. And then you're always up against code, right? So what is, build by right? What can be built on that property? And so you have to kind of balance those things out, right? So we fought for 2 years to get it reduced down to something lower. And we were shooting for 54 because there was a development proposal there years ago that was 54 units, and we liked it. And we were trying to get the developer to back off, and the developer didn't want to do that. So, but through all the work that we did get it a couple of cool things. One was we got the height to be tiered, so that
nice.
it blended in with the existing community. So instead of going from 1 to 3, you go to 1 to 2 to 3, right?
Right.
And then
stepping stones.
Yeah. More units, more buildings, less dense buildings. So instead of looking like big apartment blocks, it looks more like, 4-plexes and 6-plexes and things that just tend to blend in with the community better.
It's so funny because and thank you for sharing that, that just says you can come together and have an influence and create more housing that is conducive to feeling like it belongs in the environment that's already been established and not one that comes in as a sore thumb. Just want to take a minute so that I can acknowledge the listeners and the viewers. Thank you so much for being here watching the Sterling Spin. And I'm going to ask you to just hit that subscribe button. You'll see it right there. And then there's a bell, and just hit the bell and you'll be notified every time we have a new show that drops, which is every Sunday. And we love and we're grateful that you're here. And if you have a story or you know someone who you think would be interesting as a guest or interesting as a sponsor, my email address is sterlingspin@gmail.com. I'm really excited to welcome our newest podcast sponsor, Julie Furman and Cupid's Coach. Julie is one of the most respected matchmakers in the country, with over 1,400 matches and a real gift for helping people find not just dates, genuine love and lasting love. Whether you're ready to meet someone special, or maybe you really just want some expert guidance on navigating the dating scene, Julie's personalized approach, I'd call it a game changer. You can learn more and start your journey and see where love takes you. My intention is when you turn on the Sterling Spin, you're going to be like, who's Liz's guest today? She always has somebody new and different. And you'll always be informed and you'll always hear something. And you'll feel that your own well-being will be informed. And I think that that's really what it's like. We want to give you information that's going to help you to understand what's going on in the world, and also give you something that makes you feel better, especially when you give us little tips in the beginning, like saying, John, that we don't have to struggle when we're in growth. I mean, there are growing pains. It is hard. You used a quote in the very beginning. Do you recall what the quote was? You said something about pain and growth, and it takes a little energy, but it doesn't have to be so hard.
Yeah. I was thinking of another one, but life has changed, growth is optional.
Yes, right. And that's what you said. And I heard life is change and suffering is optional. I like that one also because if you're working against the tides, you're going to feel like you are struggling and suffering and things aren't going the way you want. So what you did was you compromised. You were able to find ways so that it was satisfactory for the community to be built. Let's do the extrapolation and go to the macro. What do you think, what do you sense is going on in the world with population, with people, with housing, with affordability?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move us into something that I'm personally interested, and that is the senior citizen population.
Absolutely.
I understand that that's growing exponentially. Right now, it's only at about 14 to 16% here in Longmont that over 65s is a number that I came up with, but I think it's bound to change. So,
Oh, yeah. It's the largest. It'll be the largest population segment, I guess, in Longmont in the next 10, 15 years.
is that because of the baby boomers, or is
Yeah.
it even more?
Well,
Are we
well,
called
it's two
Gen
fa-
X's too?
Well, yeah, and the fact that people are living longer.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that goes to
So,
play,
yeah,
right?
I mean, the number of people I help at the senior center that are in their mid 90s even is just incredible to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
So there's a lot of factors coming into play.
so nationally, like after COVID and we had the work slow down and then people couldn't get supplies and supply demand and everything
Yeah.
was, reconfiguring. And then all of a sudden we woke up in like 2023 and everything was exponentially more money,
Yeah.
costing more, and people still wanting to live their lives and make the moves and steps. And so,
Yeah.
have you a sense of what's happening throughout our America?
Well, a big problem with housing, the lack of affordability, the lack of housing in general, really happened during the financial crisis.
In '08.
Right. So everything tanked, right? Real estate values plummeted, property values plummeted, and developers weren't developing, right?
Yeah, there was a big slowdown.
Right. So if you looked at housing starts, and I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but if you looked at housing starts pre 2008 and then you looked at post 2008, it literally tanked, right? So that is a problem. Once you start to develop a deficit in housing, it's very difficult to make it up, right? It's a cumulative deficit, right? That happens over years and years and years, and it's been going on now for over 15 years. So that's a big part of the problem. If we would have been building the amount of housing we should have been building
Oh, I see.
consistently year after year,
Now I understand what you're
wouldn't.
saying. We're behind the eight ball
we're behind the eight ball.
because of such a slowdown and plus such dramatic changes in prices.
Yeah.
Whereas 2006 and 2007, the houses were like going up, 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 up,
Yeah.
up, and then all of a sudden tanked. And I think we had a 22, 23, 24 sense of another jump in the cost of
Yeah.
houses, which
Yeah.
put people in a position where they're like, wow, what has
Yeah,
happened?
COVID definitely
Yeah.
exacerbated the problem, right? Because people were looking, all of a sudden, suburbs became cool again, right? A lot of people in New York City were like,
I'm outta here.
I'm out of here, right? So towns towns along the East Coast, and they were still in proximity to New York, whether
Right.
it's Vermont, New Hampshire, right?
Well, the whole Hudson Valley
Yeah.
like woke up and people started moving into the Hudson Valley, which became the next, really cool and hip
Yeah.
place. I love how that happens. And I love how there is like a morphing and changing. I mean, I'm the kind of person who I trust and I believe that everything will work out. But I'm beginning to feel a little naive in saying that. Like, it'll work out. We'll figure it out. So here I sit in my mid to late 60s, and more I'm hearing people say they want to look at communal or community or a type of housing for when they're in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I want to live among people that I care about. I don't have to cook every day. Somebody else can cook. We could be part of a co-housing development or a cooperative. And that's like people are starting to talk about it. And I'm thinking that could be financially very feasible. Have you heard anything about
Well,
it?
as a matter of fact, the development prior to the development down the street from me, I was telling you about, right? But which, by the way, is on hold. I'm
Was
not
it
exact-
54? I mean, originally you said 72, but now
It's 63 now.
okay.
Yeah.
Compromise.
But the development before it that fell through was a co-housing development. And from what I understand, the reason it fell through was there might have been a number of reasons, but one of them was financial. They couldn't get the numbers to work. And it's a challenge because as real estate becomes more and more and more and more expensive, there's a development proposal down at it's called Quail Road, the Quail Road project. It's 310 units. I'm not sure what it is now, but it originally came in at 310. And when I was listening to the developer and some of the dialogue going there during council meetings, it became apparent to me and some others that he has to build 310 units on that ground because it's so expensive, right? So as things become more and more expensive, the density has to increase just to be able to afford to build on the property,
Right.
right? So that's another challenge that's going on is just when things get more expensive, you're more limited in what you can build. That's part of it. The other thing that's going on is if we go back to 2008, so I've talked to people that say, well, what are the challenges that we're facing since 2008 and when that housing crisis hit? And they're like, well, code didn't adjust quickly enough. What I mean by that is that there were still a lot of areas in the country that were zoned single family. You had to have a minimum size home on a minimum size lot. In many cases, it was a big home and a big lot. And if you wanted to try to build anything else, like a duplex on that, you were out of luck. So
Because the code prohibited that.
prohibited that, right? So there's been a lot of movement in code. Longmont is kind of leading in that, in my opinion, because as an example, we had a huge change in our land use code back in 2017. I think it got codified in 2018. But where I live, as an example, used to be many, many years ago was single family. It's now considered residential mixed neighborhood, RMN. And what that means is that whereas, say, a single family neighborhood, you could build 6 homes per acre, where I live, you can build 18, right?
So it is changing. I mean,
absolutely.
it definitely feels like it's changing. I go out of my driveway and I've got construction on the right, construction on the left, construction on the front. I'm like, it's growing like crazy. And it is the multifamily use. And it's a good sign because I was out in the country and now the country's, the city has come out to the country and now it's all part and it's growing
That's
and
a
it's
good point.
exciting and I like to see it. It's just when you're in the middle of construction everywhere you go, it's not the most fun, but there's a price to pay for everything, isn't there?
There is. And so I'll give you an example. I live, you've heard the term probably 15-minute walkable neighborhood.
Yes.
Right? 15-minute city, right? I live 15 minutes from downtown, right? So I can walk out my front door and I can be downtown. In fact, I walked to the senior center. I walked here today. 90% of the time, if the weather's good, I will walk downtown instead of getting in my car. It's easy, right?
I don't blame you.
It's great.
It's getting tough down here
It's
to
great.
park.
Yeah. That's
True too.
And that's true too.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's cool about my neighborhood where I live is that when you walk out my front door, like my partner, Tracy, always kids me. I'll say, I'm just taking the dog for a walk. I'll be back.
She knows you'll be back in 2 hours.
She's like, I'll see you when I see it. Because in walking out of my front door and going up a block and over, I can run into another half a dozen people that are sitting on their front porches having a cup of coffee or getting ready to, go for a walk themselves, right?
Right.
And
But
I love it.
notice how I said earlier, it's not you that's sitting on the porch because you're a man on the move, which is what I really like
but
about you.
I do sit on the porch sometimes.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And people walk by me, right? Hey, and then they come up and hey,
beautiful.
would you like a cup of coffee?
Yeah, come on over.
So the concern is, right, is that, so we're moving into form and design, right? So the concern is, if you were to put an apartment complex in that looks like shipping containers, like they're building on Martin Street.
I heard about it.
If you put that in that don't have front porches, that literally they all just kind of converge to a stairwell and then they're out, boom, they're out in the neighborhood. The concern is how do you generate a sense of community if you don't have an architecture that that instills a sense of community, right?
You put you on the street. It's John on the street. Hey, everyone. Hi,
Yeah.
here. You become the welcome wagon. Listen,
Yeah.
it's time for us to wrap up. So our time has gone fast.
Wow.
I really appreciated it. With me in the studio is John Pillmann, and he is a man who cares, and he is active. He's active with the senior center. He's active with his partner's business. He's active with New Beginnings, which gives people new beginnings. And he's someone who cares, and he knows that growth is really, there's a price to pay for growth, and you want to look to make sure that what you're bringing to your community makes your community a community,
Better
connected
community.
people, being able
Connected.
to have time with each other, see each other on the streets, feel good about what they're doing, and help each other. And you can be that person who creates community. You could be that person who speaks up because you woke up one day and said, wait a second, somebody's got to do something about this. We don't want shipping containers next door to us. We want something that's feasible and has the continuity of what you've already invested in your community.
I would say that, get educated, understand the laws that were passed last year. There were 6 housing-related bills that were passed by the state legislature. Understand them. They're going to have a significant impact on the city of Longmont and really every city along the Front Range. And understand the folks that are running for city council and mayor this year. There are 13, 14 people that have applied to run for city council. There are 4 people, I think, right now that have applied to run for mayor. Most of them have positions on their websites. They're doing, in fact, I've got at least 4 or 5 in the next week visits set up with folks running for city council and mayor, just to understand where they're at on issues such as housing and a variety of other issues as well. I would encourage you to get in front of these people, ask the difficult questions, understand their positions. It's going to be a really critical election this fall.
Thank you so much for joining us, for coming into the Sterling Spin, the
Thank you
studio.
very much.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
John.
it.
We thank you. We ask you to please subscribe and also hit the bell for notification. And until the next time you're within the sound of my voice, I want to thank you so much and let you know that your presence matters. I really do appreciate the time that you give us. And I am so grateful that we together can learn and grow and have a new spin on the way we look at life. Thank you for joining us. Bye.